In the quiet, tree-lined town of Cheshire, Connecticut, the Petit family seemed to be the picture of the American dream. There was a respected doctor, a loving nurse, and two bright, talented daughters with their whole lives ahead of them. But on a peaceful July night, that dream was shattered by a knock at the door, unleashing hours of terror that would leave a family, a community, and a nation in shock. This is a story about just how fragile peace can be, and the darkness that can hide just beneath the surface of a perfect suburban life. It's the story of a crime so brutal, so senseless, that it forced an entire state to question its laws, and a man to figure out how to live after losing everything. This is the story of the Cheshire home invasion. Before we get to the tragedy, you have to understand the life that was stolen. The Petit family wasn't just ordinary. They were deeply kind and woven into the fabric of their community. Dr. William Bill Petit was a well-known endocrinologist, respected for his compassionate care. But his real joy was his family. He was a loving husband and a doting father. His wife, Jennifer Hawke-Petit, was a registered nurse at a local private school, Cheshire Academy. She was a source of warmth and strength for her family and her students. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1998, Jennifer faced her own health challenges with a quiet grace that inspired everyone around her. Their daughters were the heart of it all. 17-year-old Hayley was brilliant, ambitious, and just weeks away from attending Dartmouth College. She was an athlete, a leader, and had even co-founded a school club to raise money for MS in her mother's honor. And then there was 11-year-old Michaela, or KK as they called her. She was a creative, joyful soul, a budding chef who loved cooking with her dad, a talented musician, and an avid reader. Her passion for life was simply infectious. They lived on Sorghum Mill Drive, a peaceful street in a town that prided itself on being safe. Their home was a place filled with love, laughter, and hope. But in the summer of 2007, that peace was about to be destroyed for good. July 22nd, 2007, was a perfectly normal Sunday. Jennifer and Michaela went to a local beach. Later, Jennifer took both girls grocery shopping for dinner. It was a day of simple, ordinary things. That evening, Dr. Petit, tired after a long day of gardening, fell asleep on a couch in the sunroom. But in the dead of night, around 3 a.m. on July 23rd, the family's sanctuary was breached. Two paroled felons, Stephen Hayes and Joshua Komisarjevsky, slipped into the home through an unlocked basement door. They were there to commit a simple burglary. What happened instead was a descent into barbarism. Komisarjevsky found Dr. Petit sleeping in the sunroom. He took a baseball bat and viciously beat him over the head. Stunned and bleeding, Dr. Petit was tied up and dragged to the basement, where he was bound to a support pole. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, he heard the men moving through his home. Then he heard one of them say, "If he moves, put 2 bullets in him." The two intruders then went upstairs. They woke up Jennifer, Hayley, and Michaela, tied them to their own beds, and pulled pillowcases over their heads. For the next several hours, the family was held hostage, while Hayes and Komisarjevsky tore through their home, looking for valuables. When they found a checkbook and saw the family had a significant bank account, a new, much more sinister plan began to take shape. As the sun came up, the horror escalated. The intruders decided to force Jennifer to go to the bank and withdraw thousands of dollars. Around 9 a.m., Stephen Hayes drove her to a nearby Bank of America. What Jennifer did inside that bank was an act of incredible courage. With her family's lives on the line, she still managed to alert the teller to what was happening. The teller later testified that Jennifer's hands were shaking as she explained that she needed to withdraw $15,000, telling her that 2 men were in her home and would kill her family if she didn't return with the money. The bank manager was alerted and immediately called 911 the moment Jennifer left. That call was made at 9:21 a.m. Police were sent to set up a perimeter around the house, but they were told to stay out of sight, following what was then standard hostage protocol. The 33 minutes that followed that 911 call were filled with pure evil. While Hayes was gone, Hawke-Petit had sexually assaulted 11-year-old Michaela. When Hayes returned with Jennifer, the depravity only spiraled. At Hawke-Petit's urging, Hayes took Jennifer into the living room, where he sexually assaulted, and then strangled her to death. Dr. Petit, still tied up in the basement, heard horrible moaning sounds, followed by what sounded like heavy sacks being thrown on the floor. Then he heard a man's voice say, "Don't worry, it's all going to be over in a couple of minutes." That chilling phrase gave Dr. Petit a surge of adrenaline. "I felt a major jolt," he later said, and thought, "It's now or never." With superhuman effort, he broke free, escaped through a basement hatchway, and stumbled, severely injured, to a neighbor's house for help. The neighbor immediately called 911. Back inside, the two killers realized their only male victim was gone. In a panic, they made a final, monstrous decision. They spread gasoline they had bought earlier throughout the house, dousing the beds, where Hayley and Michaela were still tied. And then, one of them lit a match. The house erupted in flames. As smoke and fire consumed everything, Hayes and Hawke-Petit tried to flee in the family's car, but crashed right into the police barricade. They were caught just feet from the Inferno they had created. Inside the burning home, 17-year-old Hayley and 11-year-old Michaela died from smoke inhalation, still bound to their beds. So, who were the men responsible for an act of such pure evil? Stephen Hayes, 44 at the time, was a career criminal with a long rap sheet for burglary and drugs. He'd only been on parole for a few months. His life was a revolving door of crime and prison, all of it fueled by addiction. In his confession, he tried to claim his partner was the mastermind and that things had just gotten out of control. Joshua Hawke-Petit was younger, just 26, but he was no less dangerous. He also had a history of burglary, often breaking into homes at night. It came out later that he'd been a victim of severe abuse as a child, something his defense tried to use to spare his life. He was the one who targeted the Petit home in the first place, after seeing Jennifer and Michaela at the grocery store the day before and following them. He reportedly told Hayes it would be an easy score. These weren't criminal masterminds. They were opportunistic predators whose long histories of smaller crimes built up to a night of absolute atrocity. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was a deliberate escalation into torture, sexual violence, and murder. The crime sent shockwaves through Cheshire and across the country. The sheer brutality of it was almost impossible to comprehend. The legal trials that followed were watched closely, becoming a flashpoint in the debate over the death penalty in Connecticut. Hayes and Hawke-Petit were tried separately. Their defenses mainly consisted of blaming each other, but the evidence was overwhelming. In 2010, Stephen Hayes was found guilty and sentenced to death. The next year, Joshua Hawke-Petit was also convicted on all counts and given the death penalty. It seemed, for a time, that the ultimate form of justice would be served. Dr. Petit became a public advocate for keeping the death penalty for crimes like these. "This is about justice," he said. "We need to have some rules in a civilized society." But the legal ground was shifting in Connecticut. In 2012, the state abolished the death penalty for all future crimes. Then, in a controversial 2015 ruling, the Connecticut Supreme Court declared the death penalty unconstitutional altogether. Just like that, all existing death sentences were commuted to life in prison. Stephen Hayes and Joshua Hawke-Petit's death sentences were overturned. Both men were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. They were later transferred out of state to separate maximum security prisons in Pennsylvania, where they remain today. The story of the Petit Family is a harrowing reminder of what people are capable of, both good and evil. Documenting these cases is essential if we want to understand the impact of violence and properly honor the victims. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, please consider subscribing to the channel for more in-depth reports.